Leyla Moran is quite right to ask whether or not the attack on Yemen last night is the beginning of being drawn into something where we risk being quite literally on the front line of a region that is described by many quite rightly, in my view, she says, as a tinderbox. She says that the Christmas period was difficult with her relatives in Gaza, and that the situation for her family was going from bad to worse, with one eye on what's happening to them. What we can't risk is this escalating. What we need is that immediate bilateral ceasefire. In that, I think she's wrong. What we need is peace. Ceasefire is a method towards peace, is part of one particular process, and to dictate the process is to mess up the effectiveness of the final peace, should we actually get there. To have a permanent ceasefire rather than to have permanent peace is not what we need. So a ceasefire is to look for a restoration of peace across the region, which means to resolve some of the problems and to resolve all the problems. And that means to take a much broader view. It means that we need to be thinking about the power base in Israel, the power base in Palestine, and the support structure for both parts of that power base. We also need to look for a way to ensure that the civil society across Palestine is restored and across Israel. And that means a building program. It means the engagement of charities and businesses across the region. I think it also means a development of intercultural activities and mutual business efforts. All of that needs to be considered, and a ceasefire is simply a pause in the fighting, and that is not thinking about the peace. But she is quite right. The engagement last night, what she's not right about is that there's any point in calling for a political debate in the House of Commons over this at this stage. The decision has already been taken. The die is cast. We've already crossed the Rubicon. So there's no point in saying, hey, should we go back? No, we can't go back. We now need to deal with the reality that we've got. And this is always the debate that we seem to have in this country. People are so quick to say, oh, we shouldn't have done that. Let's go back. You cannot go back. Once the decision has been made, you have to move forward. So the same thing is true about Brexit. Once the decision was made, and that's not the referendum, incidentally, the decision was taken by Theresa May, not by the people who took the vote in the referendum. The referendum was a guidance. It was not a decisive referendum. It was not the referendum which took us out of Europe. It was Theresa May's decision to invoke the clause that took us out of Europe. And so Theresa May is responsible for Brexit, not the 2016 referendum, and so on. But once that was taken, once that decision was taken, we have to deal with the reality we've got. So talking about going back into the EU is a slightly absurd idea. We talk about, instead, our relationship with Europe. And whether we are Ramonas or Leavers, we should be talking about our relationship with Europe. And too many of the current politicians are still having the debate about the referendum. If you have a political conflict, let's say a general election, let's say a by-election, and let's say that the person who wins by a sizable majority. The debate of the people who were opposing that person still goes on. Let's say the Conservative candidate wins That doesn't mean the Labour candidates and the Labour Party concedes defeat and stops talking. No. They come back in 5 years' time or whatever it is and try again. And the same thing should be true about the referendum. It doesn't mean that debate is over, it simply means it changes. And I'm afraid too many people don't recognise the reality, which is that the debate continues, and they don't recognise the reality, which is that a decisive event has occurred, and you cannot put back time. We are not Doctor Who. Instead, we deal with the reality we've got. We play the hand we've been dealt. We don't spend our time wringing our hands and playing wishful thinking games. Those are just games. We deal with reality. And I think, although Leyla Moran is a Liberal Democrat, is a very, very principled and well-informed individual, and her points are powerful and emotional and backed up by personal experience and personal links with the region, I think there is no point in having that debate in the House of Commons. It is not. It serves no practical purpose. The event has occurred. We now, I think, need a debate about what happens next and whether the UK is prepared for a response and for a campaign, for a terror campaign, effectively, and where that goes. I don't think the attack by the UK and the US has made the Red Sea any safer at all. In fact, I think it's just upped the danger level significantly. I don't think this was the way forward. But it's a decision which has been taken, and we can't undo reality.